I'm excited, mate. Excited to be sitting here and doing this with you.
Yeah, I reckon. I think we've got a little bit to
Bit,
talk about.
bit nervous. But yeah, we're going to be talking about building stories. So I guess firstly, what is this podcast going to be about? Might be a question.
Yeah, look, we've been doing this. We've been involved in this industry for a while. Sharing the knowledge, I guess. We do a lot of that.
Yep. Connecting with people.
Yeah, in the past it's been user groups and I don't know, communities. You remember Augie Forum way back in the early days of Revit,
Yeah. It was just
AutoCAD?
mostly fighting about whether Revit or AutoCAD was better. That's mostly what I remember. Yeah. All right. So let's interview each other. Your young years, Michael. Was there any hints that you would be a builder or a maker when you were growing up?
Yeah, when I was at school, I like right from the beginning of year 8. It's like I knew what I was going to be doing, and turns out I didn't do that. I was going to be a car designer. I was going to be drawing cars all day. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a car designer. So where that ended up was, okay, well, to be a car designer, you got to be an industrial designer, and so I actually followed that,
Yep.
and I, you know, as soon as I could, I was taking courses at TAFE where I could be doing, product design, development, and then that went on, and I studied industrial design. So I left school. That was studying industrial design. I just loved this whole craft making, uh, drawing component. That was always like as a kid, loved drawing, loved the art part of class at school, and industrial design was it. And I sort of kind of right from the beginning knew that that's what I wanted to do. Turns out you need to be designing where all the manufacturing was happening, and I got quite a few jobs, and I actually ended up working for Holden at one point, and I was working on
What's Holden? I don't think that exists anymore.
who is Holden? They, car manufacturer, one of the most popular in Australia. It wasn't Ford.
Adelaide was a hometown, Holden Hill.
Yeah, that's right. And so I've jumped a couple of steps. I was designing kettles and toasters when I got a job, and egg boilers and kitchen appliances. That was all getting manufactured in China, but I was there as a designer, crafting what these would look like. And
Yep.
you're in. I was using Pro Engineer 3D CAD modeling, what these components look like, and then ended up. I made my dream. I ended up at Holden doing injection molding tools for dashboards and plastic parts of the car.
Okay.
And yeah, that's as close as I got to, to drawing what a
That's
car would look like. Uh,
that's pretty close.
but
That was the dashboard, wasn't it? Working on the Holden dashboard at some point
yeah,
inside there.
in injection molding tools, great big slab of steel, and
Yep.
you're crafting, ejection points and stuff like that. How does the plastic flow into the mold? Doing all that.
So you ended up working on different kind of dashboards in the future. That was one kind of dashboard in the past.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and so it turns out when all the manufacturing disappears from Australia, so do the design jobs, and so I was looking for work, and I ended up at a structural engineering place that they were like, you know what, we need to be getting into this 3D stuff, and we, yeah, I got this job there. They're like, we need to be doing 3D, so you're the guy that's going to help us do 3D. And
Around what year are we talking? Around
so
when
this
that
is
was happening.
2000, end of 2006, I
Yep.
reckon.
Yep.
And so I got this job at the structural engineering firm, and they had heard of Revit, and were like, "We're going to give you this software. We want you to learn it, and then tell us how to do it." And so we, so that was my task. Like, okay, well, I know how to do 3D, and I kind of know about geometry, and I know what building models looks like. So let's start with let's open up Revit and have a look. Um, I did do this interesting thing though. They said before you do that, I want you to I want you to learn AutoCAD. So I had known my way around AutoCAD very well, but they like, I want you to know how to draw structures and draw, building. How do we design buildings? Or how do we document a design in AutoCAD for a structural building? And so before I could open up Revit, I spent a couple of months doing this, and it was all you learn. I had to learn a lot about line styles and weights and pen styles and all of that sort of stuff. Man, this is going back now. I didn't think we'd start this podcast and start talking about line styles and
AutoCAD.
Lisp routines
No,
and
you have to start there.
attribute
Yeah.
extraction.
Oh yeah, Batman. Yeah.
But I started there, and then you got to take that and move it across to this new Revit world. Like that was really important, and it was important. I reckon back then, everyone starting out with Revit, it was like, how do we make it look like what we were doing in the past? And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
that probably slowed down the adoption curve.
But you cared a lot about the line weights and the things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and you're like really trying to hack this system up. In hindsight, it should be just like, okay, let's go into the deep end. And
Properly.
well, actually, that brings me to a website I went looking for called What Revit Wants, right? Because there's one thing to craft, my Revit line weights the same as my AutoCAD, but really you want to do what Revit wants, right? So I don't know, Luke, tell us what's that about?
Well, I guess I'll go back to the start
back.
of my
Yeah.
go back. Start of my journey. My dad's a builder. He had all the tickets, concreting, carpentry, and so I was always around building. And one thing I remember is I was, at school there was all these trends and fads would come along and be yo-yos and be those yo-ho Diablos, and uh, my parents were always like, "No, we're not buying one of those. You have to make that toy." So whatever the new trend was, I would get out in the shed and I'd be getting bolts and cutting tennis balls in half and trying to make the toys. So that, in hindsight, was probably a good thing to start to try to make things rather than just being a consumer. I do remember in high school going to do work experience with an architectural firm, small place, and I remember them very clearly telling me, "Do not become an architect." So that was an interesting thing, and that was when they still had the old the printers that had that the smelly stuff in it. The big um, printers, and I spent most of the time in, I think, AutoCAD 10 or 12 drawing hatch patterns in this architectural firm. Yeah. So, and then, I guess over time, I just gravitated towards building industry, and because all the family was in it, and I also enjoyed technology. Another, I guess, story around that time was I was in high school and science class had a big stack of computers from like the early 90s, like 386 computers, and not many of them worked. And they said, "You can have all of these computers, just give us back a couple of working ones." So I spent many nights at home with the living end cranked up, pulling computers apart, testing RAM sticks, figuring out which computers would work. And then it eventually got a few of them going. So that was pulling things apart and working on things was something I really enjoyed as well. Yeah, and so then obviously went into pretty much a draft. Like drafting was pretty much, I guess, the direction I headed into. Technical college,
Mm-hmm.
did a building design drafting course for a couple of years. Did construction labouring at the same time. Was really good because I'm in TAFE or whatever, learning to how to draw things. At the same time, I'm out there, hammering in cyclone straps around trusses and things, and you're actually seeing it happen as you're kind of learning it. So that was good. Yeah, and I guess that kind of brings me to my first job. I was on the way to my first job interview, basically, with this architectural company, and had a car accident, and still got to the job interview, and I think that's probably why they gave me the job, because I had a
Scott's
car accident on the
desperate.
way.
He's really keen.
Still got there. And then that was still CAD, so I was still AutoCAD 14 or something, drawing electrical layouts for a bit, and then around that same time, I reckon that you talked about 2006, 2007. You're working with Autodesk people or something. They tell you about Revit 8-ish, 8, 9. Got a hold of that, started trying that out. I ended up doing a certification course or something, Revit Advanced. But it was a small firm, and so I think a bit like you would have been the expert in this digital transformation of this company as they are transitioning from one way of doing things to another. And I think it was an important journey to go on, because we're kind of learning what's the old way, where are we heading, how are we going to get there, what are the steps, and that's still things a lot of people are going through today, I guess.
And you're still coming.
So what are
you're still coming at it with this kind of this transformation. Is you bring that maker mindset, this like where you're building a Diablo, but you're crafting it. But you're now crafting. How does this business move from here to there?
Yeah, that's right. So what are some of the key moments for you, Michael, along that journey from taking this company, through a kind of Revit transition? How did you get kind of along the way from there to here?
One thing that helps. I'm just thinking about this now. It just stands out. Is I became really obsessed with it. You need to.
So
Well,
OCD helps. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
OCD helps a little bit. Yeah.
Well, yeah. People often talk about like you need to have a champion to a thing, and not that I knew I was doing that at the time, but you're really unpacking. Like Revit come off the shelf, and I'm going to really unpack this thing, and so you just really went deep on it, and I don't know that OCD, whatever it is, that I'm really going to search this thing out, and that if I didn't have that kind of care, I wouldn't have. The transition wouldn't have happened for the company quite the way it did, and certainly, like my passion wouldn't have. I just wouldn't have had that passion, and my career would have totally looked different.
And challenges, like what are some of the challenges then and kind of through the years that you've faced?
You got to bring people along the journey as well. So we would do, um, like you're trying many different ways. How do we bring people along with the journey? Because one person can't go, all right, this is the okay. So I've got the passion, I've got the zeal to kind of unpack this thing and learn all about it, and now we're going to transition this company. I can't do that. You need to bring people along, and you kind of need to ignite their interest in it, and so part of it is okay. Well, we're going to put on these sessions at work that they're going to I don't know, try and pique people's interest, and we're going to explore, the benefits of why we're doing a thing. And so one, it's like, okay, I've got to make it look, similar to what we were doing in the past, because that's going to make life easier for everybody to transition. But what's the benefit of really going out here? And then how do I articulate that to the team? And not just the team of drafters, but now the whole business unit, the whole organization is transitioning into this. So what's the benefit for everybody? Um, that that was a challenge, because change is hard for some people. Change genuinely is hard, because it's disruptive. I was doing it a certain way for a long time, and now we're changing. Why are we
So you
changing?
had this passion. You're trying to change things. I remember you talking about, that not every initiative or plan that you put together was kind of accepted or adopted. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. You are, yeah, certainly not everything is easily adopted, and you've got, you got to do it in a way that is appealing to people as well. Like, yeah, yeah, for sure.
How'd you go from this firm to kind of running your own business? How did that happen?
Um, okay, so this was quite an interesting story. One of the best projects I ever worked on was the Adelaide Oval, and it was a
Yep.
real landmark project um, for the state, and so it was really key, iconic building. So we're going to upgrade the Adelaide Oval. It's this traditional heritage, kind of place, and we're
Yeah,
going to
the old
put this new
scoreboard and
stadium.
all that.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we worked. The company I was with, teamed up with another structural engineering firm, and so there's a melding of a couple of real key people and talent, and so we're all sort of thrown into this. There's a big, project design office, and so the architects are in there, the services teams all working together. I
Yep.
loved it. It was like one of the best jobs, and it was really challenging too. Like a stadium, stadiums are hard in just by their geometry. They're a hard thing to work on, and it was still, reasonably early. This is probably now 2012. Uh, we're working on this project, so there's still, limitations that Revit's got that he's trying to work around. I think at the time it was like grids in an arc or something.
Arc. Yes, they didn't have that back then, did they? It was
Yeah.
all straight.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
so
Mm.
anyway, it was a real cool project. Now I came off of that project, and um, whilst I was there, because the construction firm was also in the same design office, and everyone was like, "There's this real melting pot of how do we get this thing built?" And so you got designers, but you've got early contractor kind of engagement. They're in there bringing their, how do we build this thing together? And what I really witnessed was like, there is a construction company here that is trying to understand the building, trying to get what they need to build. And there's this design team, and they've got all the information. And so it's not long until you're like sitting in a big boardroom and you've got the 3D model on the screen, because that's the quickest way to articulate, this is what the thing looks like, and this is what you need to build. Okay, so they start introducing things like time and cost to the equation that design teams perhaps don't think about as much. But now I want to see, well, the thing lands here, and then we pour that, and then this other thing lands on top. Okay, so now I'm starting to introduce more dimensions to the story, to this design that we're trying to, um, evolve and create. And so I went from there, like having, spent a year and a half, kind of in that environment. It was like back at the so this is actually before 2012. Um, so I'm back in the back in the studio, and I had this business idea. What if we continued to, as a business, as this structural engineering firm, what if we had a part of the division was to help builders do this more? Because this was like fantastic. The builders like loved it. We had all the information, and they just want to know more about it. What does the business model look like? So I sat down with the director, one of the directors, and we like fleshed out this idea. And he was like, okay, well, you got to come to the board meeting and you got to present this business case. And so I was like, got super excited. I was working on the PowerPoint. What's the pitch look like, and what is the business model? How does it play out? Who's working on this thing? And so I get to this board meeting and I present this business case. Like this is going to be a new part of the business. It's a new division. It's going to do this. It's going to make money. It's going to be really cool for the industry. No one else is doing it. We're going to smash it out the park. And 4 weeks later, I got made redundant. Right? So I pitched all this idea. I was like, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be so cool. And they were like, yeah, all right. And then 4 weeks later, I was made redundant. And it's hard to not string a couple of the things together. It was in the middle of like kind of GFC period and all this. But anyway, I'm like, well,
Had a good exercise to go through, probably, nonetheless. Like trying to figure out.
I just swapped out the name because I had the business model there, and so that was the start of my business. It was like,
yep,
well, let's do this, and so we started Virtual Build, and you had, this is where we kind of met, right? Because you had messaged me. We had been messaging each other, like you were trying to work out, whether to move to Adelaide or not, and who to work for and whatnot. But like, what about you? Bring us up to speed. So how did you get from, what are the challenges that you had working with the architectural firm, and kind of where did you get to?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things probably were similar to you in terms of, you were trying to adapt existing workflows to the Revit way. That's around when I started the blog, What Revit Wants, around 2007, 2008. And I originally just started sharing little tips that I had learnt along the way. I actually really enjoyed that because it kind of was a way for me to write down something. I've found something here, let's share it. And there was a good community. I wasn't the only one. There were some awesome blogs out there sharing all these tips, and we were all kind of bouncing off each other. I actually love and still love that part of the industry, the sharing, kind of everyone kind of checking their ego at the door for a bit and just like, what's the right way of doing things? Is this work? Is this not work? And then, but still you're in an architectural office, and one good thing was I got to sometimes like go to sites, even as I wasn't like a proper registered architect, but I could go kind of print the drawings, take them to the site office, sit in a kind of site meeting, got to meet the guys who were actually walking around, building these things, hearing about the problems that were happening on site, things that I had been involved in drafting, but now it's happening there on site. That was great. I love that experience. And, it just helped me, I guess, along the journey. Again, I think any time you can connect what you might be doing in a digital space to the real world and make a solid connection, that really changes your kind of level of understanding. So What Revit Wants was going pretty good.
How's the adoption in the office?
Like a small firm, so there's only a handful of drafters, so I could really kind of go to town, I guess, and get that set up. There were still interesting challenges. Like I remember one of the architects there was skilled in AutoCAD and really good at detailing in AutoCAD, but to actually try and get that level of detailing done in Revit was a challenge at the time because of the look and feel thing. And so we'd end up, he'd be doing all this documentation work in CAD, and I'd be setting up all these views in Revit and linking the CADs to Revit, and you kind of could see this is not optimal, but we're working with the people we've got and kind of the constraints around change that we've got. And we delivered some really really cool projects, and around that time was there was a college, like a theatre in a private school kind of college, and that was probably a Revit model that I did stacks of work on. We did like all the animation work, trying to get the materials right around Revit 2012 2013. It's big headaches, get all your materials mapped up, getting things rendered with machines back then. I remember leaving machines rendering overnight, and you kind of do half the frames on this machine, half on this machine, join it up in some other software. And yeah, it's still out on YouTube somewhere, that little animation. But yeah, I guess up against the technical challenges. Yeah, and then when my family and I wanted to move to Adelaide, had a couple of kids at that time and wanted to do something different. And in the industry in our area was in a bit of a downturn. So Adelaide had some pretty cool projects on. Went down there and actually went into a larger architectural office. Got to work with some great people who I still work with in the industry now, but saw different challenges. One story there was it was around Windows XP to Windows 7 transition kind of time, and I think Revit 2014 needed Windows 7. Okay, so I'm looking at all these computer towers in the office, and they all have like a Windows 7 sticker on them, but they all have Windows XP installed, because that's like the IT department, standard. Is we're not going to install this new version of Windows, that's going to cause problems. So we can't run the new version of Revit. But we kind of needed to, because we were doing Revit server things between different offices, and it was a challenge. So I ended up getting my hands dirty and kind of building a template, machine. I got some buy-in from the kind of manager in the office there. And so I built like this Windows 7 Revit 2014 template, and then started ghosting that image around the office. And at some point the chief, technical officer or CIO or something gets wind of it and comes to me like, "What are you doing? You can't be doing that, installing this software. It's all, So, it was a lesson learned, but it was also like I could see then that there's organizational constraints around change, even things that seem really obvious when you've got the software available to you and it's better and it's faster, and you still have to almost break the chains somehow to make it happen. Yeah, and then at the same time, another little story there I remember is this firm was been around for a long time, and back when there was kind of almost mainframe machines that you would log into to do really like pre-AutoCAD kind of stuff. And there was a new project coming on. They wanted to dig up some of this old data from these old machines that they had sitting in the back of the office. So it was, trying to kind of hack into them and, connect to them with network cables and spin up these really old operating systems to get information out. That was a lesson around data and obsolescence. And, if your information is locked up in old systems and those systems kind of go out of date, you're going to have a challenge to kind of get back to that information and use it in the future.
Yeah. No, this is an interesting conundrum. I don't know what the word is, where you, like a system, you bring out a system because it's going to standardize the way we do things. We know what we're going to get. It's repeatable. That's why we have systems. But the nature of them is that they do become obsolete. Or the nature of like moving forward is that we're going to break ground elsewhere. Now we have to disrupt this system that we're relying on.
And that's what proper innovation is something that's highly disruptive.
You can't be too married to it, right?
No. So then I'm working at that firm, and then there's the biggest project in the Southern Hemisphere basically starts in Adelaide, which is the new Royal Adelaide Hospital. And like the Adelaide Oval, I think it just started dragging talent into it. And I was interviewed by a guy there that we still work with, and hopefully he'll come on the podcast one day. But we're able to get working with him on that project, and that's kind of when you and I well, when I joined your business, really, in Virtual Built, and started working together on this really complicated project, 800 odd Revit files, and we were doing the clash detection coordination process. Very cool, because of the scale of the thing. And again, everyone's co-located. So, back then you'd have all of the service disciplines in the room, the architects, everyone's modeling together. Really, really weird challenges back then, like, because there was no common data environment for kind of Revit files. So you're still managing Revit files, you know what I mean? And put them on machines and try and sync them between different offices and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. These big
yeah,
projects, they really stress test your ideas of how you run projects, or the way
that's
you do
right.
things.
Yeah,
Like you can, in your architectural firm, you're doing, building here, building there, and but it's not until you get to these massive projects that, that way that we're doing things just doesn't work at that scale. Or, this does work. Let's apply it now at scale.
yeah. Once you get something that does work on those big projects, you can be real confident in it. I mean, I guess that's what we're seeing with the Middle East now. In the huge projects, is they're stress testing every piece of technology, because of the scale is at another level. Yeah, but we learnt Navisworks back then. We were looking for ways to do better issue tracking. You remember, we were trying to figure that out. It was a cool time because we're trying to build things along the way, and I think that's where this builder idea comes back in. Is we weren't just sitting there doing modeling or clash detection. We're like, how do we do it better? How do we track this, over time?
Yeah. You've really got this headspace of like how do we do things better? This is the name of your blog, What Revit Wants. There's a way of doing things, and there's a way of improving things. I don't know. Is there anything else you can talk about that? Like, this is where we're doing clash detection, but is this the best way to do clash detection? We got Navisworks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had to break up the models quite a lot to be able to even work with them. But then you got vanilla Navisworks, so you're doing manual grouping of clashes, and then you're exporting XML files and sharing those between the team. And there's no live collaboration. There's nothing that's kind of linking all this together. It's like someone's in a silo finding the clashes, sending that off. Someone else is in a different silo trying to action them, and they never really came back. Like the loop kind of never could close real well. And I remember you were experienced with BIM 360 Glue, and we were trying to figure out ways to make that work. And we met with the BIM 360 Glue product managers, remember? And we're trying to explain different ideas on how we thought they could introduce issue tracking. This is probably 2015, something like that.
How do we take iPads out on site?
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, but they were great. They were great projects to be a part of because we were pushing the technology, and everybody in the industry was kind of getting pulled together, and you had to learn from each other. You had to teach each other, and ultimately, kind of when you come out of it the other side, you're like, okay, this is the way we're going to do it because those other 50 ways we tried didn't quite work out. You had to go through. You had to get the bruises in some ways to know what the right way of doing things were, or the way that would work.
I've got a question for you. How do you think a project office works? Like everybody, like there's lots of pros for a project office and design. Everybody getting into the room together.
Yeah.
How does does cloud solve the same problem, or it's? And I just bring this up because I was having this conversation just the other day with somebody else. I don't know. His opinion was that cloud isn't the same solution to a problem of working in silos.
Yeah, I mean that takes me back to another story way back. We when I was at the architectural place in the sunny coast, and there was another architect who was a specialist in aquarium design, and he was working on Resorts World Sentosa in Singapore and putting the biggest, bit of perspex in a whale shark tank or something. And anyway, so that guy pulled everybody into like a room for 2 days. He pulled together dolphin experts and whale experts and water people and architects, and I was there modeling kind of masses to figure out how much volume of water we're pulling from the ocean into these tanks. And what you saw was you're probably getting months of work done in days because the experts are all accessible to each other quickly.
Mm.
And I still think it's very hard to substitute that digitally. If you want to accelerate something, putting people in a room doesn't have to be for days or months, but even for a few hours, put people in a room together. I think you actually get more benefit, than doing 20 Teams meetings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not always easy to do, but this is some of the challenges, I guess, with cloud, and I think people are getting better at using these things.
Mm.
My wife keeps telling me I have to look at the camera more, so that's something I'm working on. So how's the industry changed since you first started, Michael? Like, you try and summarize that in 20 something years of change.
Well, I mean, recently I find myself explaining BIM less. that only took about like 10 or 15 years for people to understand the definition of BIM.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, the dead horse just flogging the same conversation, but it needed to happen. It's just like a hard to shift. You construction companies get it. Even perhaps they get it more now than like maybe a consulting design firm. They really understand.
Get what? Like, as in the value of this
Yeah,
digital
the
construction
value
thing?
of BIM. What's the why are we doing this digitally now? Why else? Yeah, I mean, the industry is a slow-moving industry. This construction and Contech, it's a pretty difficult industry to innovate in. It's a pretty slow-moving, very large industry to sort of move. That to turn the rudder, and it's going to take a long time. You innovate or you bring something disruptive, it's still going to take a long time for it to shift. And so you just got to kind
It
of
takes a lot of education.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
trying to educate people before they can change.
yeah,
You spend a long time on that doing it.
yeah. And I think because that's the way we've always done it. Like people have a lot of this short-term memory loss with construction projects, because on every project, the project does get built, and we have been doing this since the Roman Colosseum. We have been building buildings for a long time.
Sometimes 3 builders go under on that project.
Yeah, but there's this short-term memory loss. We get to the end of the project, we turn back, and we're like, "Well, see, it got built." We didn't make any money on it.
Yeah.
It took
Yeah.
a year longer than it was supposed to, but it got built. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
How would you answer that? Like, what do you think how has the industry changed?
Yeah, I think I like what you said about not explaining BIM anymore. We always felt that digital kind of workflows would just become the normal way of doing things. And I think we've been sharing that probably for the last 10 years, that like BIM is not really a thing, right? It's just a new way of building. And it doesn't need to be a cost, and there doesn't need to be a team of elite experts forever knowing this secret, magic thing. It
Yeah,
should just be, this is how architects work, this is how engineers work, this is how builders work. It's a new tools in the toolkit, but there's a whole heap of process wrapped around it. And I think I think that's probably what changed, is that people have figured out or are figuring out the process better. Like there used to be a lot of blockers. Like, I'm not going to share my model with you because you'll get my family's, all those kind of things. Whereas now, the issues are more like, okay, we're going to share the model. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it at this time frame. We're going to make sure it has these things in it. So at least a lot of those things are starting to get ticked off, to varying degrees of success. And hopefully, and I think this is happening, the industry is now shifting to just benefiting from the change. The change had all this pain. It's like going to the gym and working out the first time. It hurts a lot. But by the time you get, gone through the exercises enough, it starts to, you start to see the benefits. And so I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Start getting
what
your
we
reps
see.
up. We're doing this again. Yeah.
Get your six pack going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember, like
What do you?
years of saying, look, is this going to be a Revit project? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm. So what are you most proud of, in the working career, along that journey? Some project stands out, something you worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I
What are you
mentioned
proud of?
the Adelaide Oval. That was a really cool project to work on. The hospital when we first started. Obviously, jumping out and starting my own business. That was pretty scary. We had a 6-month-old baby, and I used all of my payout to buy license from Autodesk.
The baby
It's like
bonus.
26 grand or something at the time. It was like, oh man, are we really? Wow, this is a lot of money for some software. Um, oh,
Wow.
yeah, that was pretty scary. Um,
Yep.
uh, but oh, like I you had a lot of people supporting you as well, um, and like kind of rooting for you. So that was really good. And like from in Adelaide, it's pretty small. Well, even in this digital engineering space, it's a pretty small little space that we find ourselves in, and you do get a lot of support. Like it's a lot of people know each other, and you're able to. Okay, so we're going out on our own, and you kind of get people backing you and supporting you. That's pretty good. Um, yeah, I mean, people. The industry is made up of a lot of people doing their thing, and when you're working together, that makes a big impact.
Powerful. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of on the hospital, towards the end of the hospital project, and we were starting to do that auditing of the models, and a lot of models, and Cindy, who we were working there with Cindy, and she said, "Luke, I think you could probably automate some of this." And we'd been working in Dynamo, of course, for quite a while by then, and then we started writing out the whole auditing process in Python and to Excel, and automating that, and you could do multiple iterations. And in terms of I guess a task that kind of moved me, through my career, I think that was probably a big one, in being able to look at a problem at scale, figure out how to automate it, figure out
Mhm.
how to get the outputs, building all the kind of tooling in behind there, and it became a precursor to a lot of other things we did after.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, advice. What piece of advice would you give someone who's interested in working in this industry? Might be just starting out, might be in uni, might be an apprentice.
Yeah,
What do
I
you
don't
reckon?
think I would give the advice that the architect gave you and said, "Don't do this." I mean the piece I think that has helped, and maybe this is to your point you're just talking about, that critical thinking, that problem solving piece. That's what I would bring to kind of any job, really. And you certainly need it in a space that's kind of innovating in in an area, in a field.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're gonna be up against it. So you got to really do the work on the benefit and
Yep, yep.
what are the risks.
Yeah, I think I think if I could go back and tell myself something, it'd be like learn how to manage your time really well, um, and particularly focus your efforts. So, everybody's got this much work to do in a week, but like, there's obviously repetitive tasks that you might get dragged into, but sometimes you step back and go, actually, if I do this or build this thing or do it that way, every single time I touch this task is going to be better.
Mm.
Um, and the same kind of goes with general time management and time blocking. No matter what, whether you're swinging a hammer or you're founding a startup, your time management is going to be a big indicator on how well you can actually succeed. I think
Yeah,
that's what I would like to.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. What mistakes could you share for others to avoid?
Coming back to the people thing, trying to do things in silo, even wrestling with the problem in silo, and then maybe not talking about it enough with other experts, or that'd probably be my mistake. Um, uh, yeah, can't think of anything else.
I've got a story, my mistake that I made. So I was doing what Revit wants, and I'd often do hardware reviews and software reviews and stuff, and occasionally get paid for them to write up the review. Anyway, so I got involved in the Revit content management exercise, and I was basically doing a survey across different tools that would manage your families, and I was doing all kind of benchmarking and figuring out this whole matrix on which one's the best, and interesting project. But one of those content management companies had paid me to do that task, because there's a lot of work involved, and I hadn't been transparent enough with the other ones, and said, actually, this company has paid me to do this task,
Oh, yeah.
and so that you know, in the end it was okay, and I ended up buying one of the guys there a beer who I'd upset on the other side. But I still look back and go, um, your integrity is tied to transparency. If you are hiding something, that could hurt your brand, your recognition, like your integrity for a long time. And so it was, I guess, more of a warning than anything. That to me was like, be careful, because you got to, you're going to be working with these people for decades.
Mm,
So you got to those relationships are so important.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
What's up next for you? What are you excited about?
Let's go back for a sec. What I was very excited about was kind of where this virtual reality piece is going to come in. Like, where's this? What did VR and augmented reality look like? Um, so I was quite excited about that. In my career, we worked on a lot of construction animations. We ended up doing really well in that piece. You're really articulating this model and in this kind of virtual world. And
Mm.
then the promise of the goggles and kind of getting myself inside of this whole environment. That was really exciting, but it's not as exciting. It doesn't have it's not going to have the same impact of change that data is going to now introduce to the world. So it might have been pretty, and it might have, this virtual, maybe the putting this goggles on and jumping into this virtual world of my construction site. That might be pretty. It might have more wow factor. It might be immersive and really cool, but it's not going to have the same impact on the world as what data is actually going to have. And so
Mm-hmm.
now we're talking about, and this is where deep space comes in. Like, what does the data look like on my project? How do we monitor the data? what does this data? What's the story the data is telling? That it might not be as pretty, but it's got some incredible promise of the future. It's really going to impact
Mm,
the industry. I don't know,
mm,
you want
mm.
to add to that, or what do you? What's pretty exciting for you?
Yeah, I guess in the past of my career, it's been a lot about like learning and then kind of sharing and teaching. And so if I look forwards and I kind of go, what am I excited about is, the opportunity to delegate, to teach people, to have kind of this group or, who are kind of moving in a direction together. And I think that, some of those things are tight. They're kind of at the company level. Some of those things are kind of at the fraternity level, and I think there's now this group of people who, like you say, they understand the value of data. They want to acquire it. They want to dig into it. They want to analyze it. They want to do ML. They want to do AI. And some of those people are uni students, and some of them are builders who have been in the industry for 40 years. And that kind of excites me, is that there's these are the people who are going to now innovate and disrupt kind of as a group,
Mm.
because they see the future. What does a builder of the future look like, or a digital engineer? How do some of these roles evolve, you think, in the next few years?
Yeah, uh, I think the builder of the future. Yeah, the builder of the future has a real finger on the pulse of their construction site, rather than a lot of gut feel and tradition driving projects forward. It's like where are we right now? And you watch I don't know, sports, or you see athletes, and there's lots of metrics that they're monitoring. They've got a finger on the pulse. There's statistics. Like, as you watch some of these
Mm-hmm.
sports games, and you can't believe the statistics that are coming out from these statisticians. But really, they're all data points. Okay, well, how many first serves does this guy get in every time? Or
Mm-hmm.
what part of the game does this player need to work on? Why is this team better in the first half than the second half? Like, what is that? Why are my 3-point
Mm.
shots down right now in my playoff series? Okay, so what does that mean? This is all data points that I think we as an industry, maybe this is the builder in the future, has got the finger on the pulse of lots of different metrics to understand the performance of their building
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
their organization. At an organization level, that's going to be even more important.
yeah. I
You know?
mean, finger on the pulse is a good analogy, but it's also a bit like the construction project is like this person with all the sensors hooked up. It's like they're going through this big operation, and everything is hooked up live at every vital organ.
Mm.
So it's not just one sensor, is it? It's so many different things that feed into, is my project healthy? Am I
Yeah,
going to get this
yeah,
thing done? Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
true.
think you're also going to have to keep the projects fun. Like I found, I was having this conversation recently with a builder that we worked on together for years and years ago. And it was a very successful project, but it was because we all had a lot of fun doing it. It was a project office too, by the way. But interesting that we need to, I don't know, have a finger on the pulse, but also have fun doing it.
Yeah. What are you curious about? What are you kind of what still kind of gets you out of bed in the morning to think about, something exciting that's coming, that's going to happen?
Um, what did I do yesterday that is going to change the way I do things today? Maybe just even maintaining that curiosity. as we,
Yeah.
I don't know, evolve to do things better. We are. I love this this little anecdote by Steve Jobs, and I don't think it comes from Steve Jobs, but he talks about it in one old dusty interview. He talks about this this story about being tool builders, and how there's this Scientific America article about how they monitored the kind of energy expenditure of all these different types of animals to see which one was the most efficient at doing a certain thing, like walking from A to B. And so like that, everything to an eagle, and so where did humans kind of sit in that piece? And the humans did not fare very well. Like they're like a halfway down the list. Far more, far many more animals are more efficient than humans are at doing a lot of things. But what sets humans apart was we are tool builders. And so whoever did this scientific study had the smarts to say, well, what if we paired the human with a bicycle to see if it would make a difference? And with the bike, the humans kind of like skyrocket to the top of the list. They are by far more efficient than anything else, and it's because we are tool builders.
Builders
And
and
I
makers.
think
Yeah.
the future will always be about building a tool. We come back to this AI, conversation that is happening a lot. Really, it's a tool. Uh, is it going to replace someone? It's going to replace some jobs, but it's going to be a tool for a lot of people that just will help them get their job done. Steve Jobs goes on to say that he likens the computer to being a bicycle for the mind. So if we had a calculator to do a sum, it makes it easier. It's a bicycle for efficiency in your brain, and so that's what he kind of likens the computer is the bicycle for the mind. I don't know, what gets you out of bed? What are you curious about in the future? Where are you thinking? Where do you want to skate to?
It is something around this AI, and I've gone really deep and come out and kind of back and forth thinking about this, where things end up with AI, and come up with different ideas about embodied intelligence and what's going to work for our industry, automation. There's obviously a lot of resistance, some resistance, I guess, around AI. But what I think is exciting is making people do what they do best, giving them the tools so they can do what they do best, right? So it's pretty similar to what you're saying, but basically, there's a lot of things we do that are still suboptimal, that are slow, that are repetitive. The inputs are almost always the same. The outputs are, there's an algorithm that determines the output or something. Like over time, if a machine is doing more of that, there are two things that happen. Either when I'm at work, I'm thinking like a human and doing strategic things, and I'm trying to optimize process and kind of be really inventive, all right, which is good. Or I go home and be with my family is the other thing that I can do, because now a machine has done a lot of things, and now I can go. I live at Glasshouse Mountains. I can go climb a mountain with my kids, which is fuel for the soul. So I think when we start to see these tools actually elevate kind of the way humans do work, then I think we're really getting somewhere. Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of tools, is this a quick fire round?
All right.
All right. So, hammer, screwdriver, or duct tape?
Well, you didn't give me a zip tie option, so I'm going to go hammer because I like hitting nails in.
We're not getting rid of bodies. I don't know. You did the zip ties?
I still got a bumper sticker. Don't worry, I zip tied it.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, mate? Hammer, screwdriver, duct tape?
I'm going with the hammer. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I can move stuff with force.
All right. What about concrete, steel, or timber? Pick a material.
It's
You
got to
only
be
have
timber.
one.
It's got to be
Yeah,
timber.
could be timber. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this one I think we're not going to agree on. Apple, Microsoft, or Google? Three big players making hardware, making software. Which one you?
No, it's got to be Apple.
uh,
We need some polish. We need to have some people caring about our future. Right. That's terrible.
just, just,
No.
just because it's shiny doesn't make it better. Yeah. You know, I've always been like Microsoft, and I think that from a business point of view, I think Microsoft has got a lot of things figured out. But more recently, you know, I think Google has a certain approach to development and things that I really like. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I'm kind of going between two there. I
Mm.
tell you what was a good boss moment though was when you bought me a Microsoft Surface Pro, even though you're an Apple man. Turned up in my house one day and dropped me off a new machine, and yeah.
Oh, no.
Cool. All right. Now V8 or EV, Ford or Holden. V8 or battery in it, or are you going to have petrol in it?
You come back to the V8, like you turn your head for a V8, right? You
They
hear
got the EVs with the sound maker things in them now.
it. Yeah.
Speaker sticking out. Ford or Holden?
It's got to be a Ford, old Ford, yeah, or
All right. Now
an
digital.
EH Holden. Depends as to how far we go back.
Oh, okay. Go back far enough. Yeah,
Now we're ticking both boxes here.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a Ford man. I'm a V8, like V8s, but yeah, I almost feel guilty now when you start thinking about the environment. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Um, Digital or traditional? I thought this is a good question that you come up with. Is there something that's retro that the old way still has a certain charm, even though there's technology around it? What do you look back and go, no, I still want to do
Yeah,
this
see,
way.
this is a bit similar to the V8 or EV, kind of question, because there's this nostalgia that you kind of go back to. But like, is that progress? No, I don't know. So what's uh, digital? I remember I really enjoyed technical drawing at school, and I remember drawing houses and you know and understanding line weights back then. And you're getting your pencil and you've got your drawing table and your big ruler, and you are crafting this thing. So a lot of the digital loses a lot of craft. Eh? I don't know. It's
Yeah,
kind of,
true.
yeah,
Oh, 0.18 and the 0.25 and the 0.35 pens.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna digital traditional. I'm gonna say social interaction because you know, social media versus in person. I'm gonna say talking to someone real time, live. It can't be substituted with a social media platform.
No, no.
Maybe maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe that's why I say that.
Oh, maybe this is an age-defining question. Like another way, it's like, do I want to craft a model out of clay or foam or
Yes.
whatever,
Or 3D print it.
or a 3D printer, or do I put my VR headset on and I'm like in the model, or do we
All
craft
right.
it? Yeah.
That's it. That's good, mate. I think we're there. Episode 1 is done
All
on
right.
building
Cool.
stories.
Building stories.